I remember thinking like, usually when you're in a sales conversation, even if you've prepared, you're still thinking about what to ask next, right? Because your goal in sales is to get to the next conversation, to get to the next, keep going. I remember James Muir wrote that great book, The Perfect Close. And do you know him at all?
I've read, I think, one of his books. I don't think I read Perfect Close.
It's a great book. I interviewed him probably in the middle of the pandemic. And I remember before I read it, I'm like, okay, the close, right? The moment, at that moment, it's like, Colin, here's my proposal. Can we get this done in budget one? Like that moment. And his point was there might be 42 closes, in the process. How are we going to close this call? Are we going to schedule the next call? Are we going to schedule a call with your CFO, with someone on your tech team? So there's all those closes along the way. So, I enjoy talking about sales. I have a business called the Institute for Excellence in Sales. But when I had that conversation with the guy in the hotel, I remember thinking to myself, well, I remember at one point I said, what do I ask next? But it wasn't like from a sales manipulative perspective, and it might have been fleeting. It was like, have you tried SOT therapy? Have you tried oxidation therapy? Have you spoken to Dr. Jemzek, who has the Jemzek clinic? Is your son off of gluten? Have you tested for mold? It wasn't like, question do I ask you? What keeps you up at night? Like I told you before, I know those things, but the questions I asked him were, and they weren't rehearsed. I didn't have any idea that this guy had Lyme disease in his children's life, which means it's in your life. But the moment that he came up to me and told me, all of a sudden I had the right questions to ask, but it wasn't like, okay, what's question number 3? It was just like relevant, important, valuable questions. And those 30 minutes, they flew by. We're still in business. I don't talk to him about Lyme anymore because there's nothing, not that we don't have to. We just talk about other things. His company is now a participant in our program. So I talk to his directors and he knows if we ever need to talk about Lyme. In a lot of cases, the Lyme is like one conversation, and then all of a sudden you've crossed this transom because that this person has something in common with you. Mm. And it's not just like we both like fishing, that old sales trick looking for, something in the guy's office. It's like, I know something.
I see you love lamps.
I see you have carpeting. Oh, I also, what's your favorite carpet? I see you breathe air. Oh, we have that in common. What's your favorite air? No, but seriously, when you have something like this in common, you've already broken down, like you had just said, you've broken down those barriers. And, it's like, you don't want to be asking people, do you have Lyme disease in your world? No. Well, do you have cancer in your world so that I can talk to you about my experience with cancer? I mean, that doesn't come across as authentic, but, be interesting. I mean, it's just the last thing is, 2 things I'm going to leave you with here. One is, unless you want to ask me more questions, one is be interesting, right? I mean, just be interesting. And be interesting could be having a conversation with me about the direction of my industry. Show me that you are interested in where my industry is going. Because if I'm a CIO or tech director or director of HR at a company, I'm interested in the direction of my business. I'm interested in where my industry is going. I'm going to be interested in your technology and your solution and your service if it's going to help me get there faster, quicker, or better. But every customer isn't really thinking about you. They're thinking about where they need to go and if you can help me or not. And I forget the second point I was going to make, but, just be interested and be interesting.